Welcome to These Fertile Grounds, a podcast dedicated to planting the seeds that inspire women to pursue authentic, purposeful, and fulfilling careers. I am your host and career coach, Zainab Kahira. Join us as we share the diverse experiences of women from various industries, exploring their unique journeys, celebrating their authenticity, and reflecting on the lessons they've learned along the way. Welcome to our premiere episode. In today's episode, we will be speaking with Shobna Kannusamy. Shobna Kannusamy is an engineer, pastry chef, small business owner, and leadership coach. Recognized for her innovation and being on top of the game, she served as a Food Network Canada judge on The Wall of Bakers. Known for her passionate, creative, and lively approach, Shobna empowers her clients to grow and pursue their goals with self-empowerment, courage, and vulnerability. Her coaching practice is centered around tapping into her clients' inner strength, confidence, and values to bring about positive and meaningful transition in their careers and lives. Everyone, let's welcome Shobna Kannusamy. Hi, Shobna. How are you?
Zainab. I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. So for everyone who's listening and watching, this is my very first recording of this podcast. I'm going to be full of authenticity and transparency as much as I can within my boundaries. So Shobna, I feel honestly, I don't know if I mentioned this before we started recording, but I really feel safe that I'm with you because Shobna and I, we have a relationship or working relationship together. And so we interact every week, honestly. And every time I have a chance to interact with you, it's always like a very safe and warm and just, you feel like you're getting a hug.
Oh, Zainab. I am a hugger, virtual or not. I'm very handsy. But thank you. That was so kind. And thank you so much for welcoming me into this space. I'm so excited for you and honored to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. So you all at this point have heard Shobna's bio and introduction because I shared it before we started chatting, but I wanted to start off by just giving you the opportunity to just share your career story. Like, what were some of the beginnings, some of the highlights? I'm all ears.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for this space. Well, career story. It's an extremely meandering path. It was definitely not a straight arrow. I think I've always been the one that goes against the grain since I was a kid, and that seemed to be the trend with me in terms of how I lead, how I switch careers, and how I live, because I don't want to settle, right? I think life's too short to settle. I want to be happy, and I want to do something that makes me happy and do something that I can feel is touching someone's lives in a positive way, the way I intend. And that has been the purpose beneath all the career changes that I've gone through. And being of South Asian background, but I'm from Malaysia. I'm Indian, so I'm a real diasporic kid, right? So we are not comfortable in any space because we're always the different one. And following that path of the usual, the straight path, the one that's expected of us, I had the privilege not to. I think that was the key of my freedom, because the fact that I could actually say, hey, I don't really want to be an engineer anymore. I would like to pursue something else.
Yeah.
And I do recognize that as a privilege. And I,
Yeah.
paid my way through school, but not engineering school. That was gifted to me by my parents. And so that portion of disappointing your elders and going into something that they would have considered to be not as secure of a career path was very difficult for me to to accept and swallow. But I had to do it. I think something in myself said, I really need to do something that brings me joy so that I can give other people joy. It's almost like you got to fill your own cup before you overflow it and give it to others.
Yes, that's right.
And that was a real turning point for me, and I loved it. I did it for 20 years. It was the highlight and lowlights of my existence right now, and now I'm in my next phase of coaching and coaching women of color through entrepreneurship and leadership, and I'm still serving, and I love that. I love service. I feel fulfilled when I touch one person. I that fills my cup. So it's been quite the change. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And you said, so for 20 years you were a chef,
I
correct?
was, yeah. Yeah.
So how soon after completing your engineering degree did you transition into being a chef?
3 years.
Three
Yeah, so I worked. Yeah,
years.
so I worked at a corporation, like a big organization. It was like, okay, I'm dating myself now, like in the year 2000, where everything was crashing because of Y2K. So I was like,
I
yeah,
know.
it's a great
Listen, I
job.
need people to remember that when they freak out about AI, because it's like we've
It's
seen these like
happened before. Yes.
before, yeah, but yeah.
Absolutely. So Y2K presented a brilliant opportunities for, great high paying jobs for fresh graduates out of engineering
Yeah,
school. So I
yeah,
went into IT pretty much straight away. And since this is a career podcast, I'm just going to spell it out right now. All us
yes,
female engineers did get paid much less than the male engineers. We didn't know it at the time, but boy, like
yeah,
that
and
stung.
some still do to today.
Yep, yep.
Quite a bit still to today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was like what,
Wow.
25 years ago. But so no, I did work in that industry for 3 years, and I really just found myself looking forward to coffee breaks, to lunch,
Mm.
and to coffee breaks, and to going home. And when you're that young, and you almost feel like you're losing your way, because why are you looking forward to breaks? Right?
Yeah,
So I was like, this, there
exactly.
must be more to this. There must be more than just a paycheck. And the paycheck was great. It allowed me to start figuring out life, right? And how to
Yes.
handle money. Like you're a young adult, you suddenly get your first paycheck and you're like, yeah, let's go shopping. And then you realize it's like, oh, there are bills to pay too. But
That
in
fantasy ends real quick.
so quick, so quick. But that really opened my eyes into the fact that I was bored, and I didn't like being bored, and I was
Yeah.
directionless. So with all that education and all the things that we had achieved by the time, we were young 20s, and that was the road that was meant for us to follow, I still felt hollow.
Yeah. So I have a question about that because
Mhm.
I that's something I do hear, and I'm sure you hear it too, with some of your specifically career coaching clients. Is this idea of boredom, and I think sometimes we feel guilty that we're bored. Like we feel like, well, what's wrong with me? I'm an engineer. I'm making good money. I'm probably working for a really great company. Why am I bored? I went to school to study this. Like, why am I bored? So, did you experience that self criticism, that self doubt where or shame because you were enjoying what you were doing?
So this is where there's another twist to the story. In year
Mm,
two, I really did want
twists
to quit. Yeah, I wanted to quit
of
engineering.
school.
Yep, of school,
Wow.
um because architecture school was right next door. They were building all
Hmm.
these really cool models. Like this is back in the day, right? And for me,
Yeah.
I'm a very crafty person. I was messing around with cakes in the kitchen,
Yeah.
baking to pass time, and I was like, I understand that I need a degree, but this is just not doing it for me. And so I told my parents, and my dad was like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
finish
Yeah.
what you started. And
Yeah.
to this day, I understand deeply what that meant to him and how that translated. But funnily enough, I'm a parent now, and my kids maybe about 4 to 5 years away from graduating high school, and I that memory always kind of comes back to me because at a certain point, when someone feels a certain way and they're telling you honestly, like that's what they're feeling, there are other ways to deal with that situation.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
are other paths you can take, but and just
Yeah.
to be open to what is it that your gut is telling you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I was going to say that, like, I mean, you clarified that it was your parents who were like, you have to finish this through, but there were signs for you that, maybe this isn't the right thing for you. And a lot of times, or often, we see the signs, and we ignore them. And the fact that you were willing to have the courage, because I know that wasn't an easy conversation to have with your parents.
No, not
I
over the
have a lot
phone
of,
too, Zaina.
yeah, oh,
Oh my goodness, we were in different countries, thank goodness. 'Cause I would have been beaten down to a pulp.
yeah, I know. So that probably was that courage, that foundational courage that you have, is probably something um, that you channeled when you were finally ready to make that pivot, right? That
Yeah,
into being a chef. Would you
yeah.
say that?
Well, just to clarify, like my
Hmm.
intention wasn't to quit university altogether. My
Right,
intention was
right,
just to switch. I was like,
right,
so
right.
I went with a plan. Like I didn't
Hmm.
go, Dad, I don't want to do this anymore. I was like, okay, so I don't want to do this anymore, but this is what I would like to do instead. And
Hmm.
and that seemed to me reasonable for the amount of work I've already put in to then continue. So that wasn't really in question. Quitting wasn't in question. Changing was in question. And I think that is the moment I fell in love with change. Because
Yeah.
change is hard.
Oh,
Change is tough.
yeah. Yeah,
Pivoting
it
is tough. I
is.
know it's an overused word right now, post pandemic, but it is
Yeah.
actually really difficult to think about yourself in any other box that you've seen yourself in.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
how does that apply to your career, right?
Yeah. What do you love about change? Because a lot of times when I
Opportunity.
hear people frame change,
Yeah.
or frame their relationship with change, they talk about the negative part of it. So,
Yeah.
what do you love about it? You said opportunity.
Yeah, opportunity, that fear, but then the fear turns into flutter. So
Mm.
when and you're kind of like leaning into that fear, going, oh my god, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? What am I going to do? That's actually a good thing. That's like the bees buzzing in there, going like,
Yeah.
what is happening? What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? And often we get stuck there
Yeah.
because it's difficult to keep thinking about it because it looks like doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Well, what's the opposite of doom and gloom?
Yeah.
Everything has two sides.
I like that. That is the opposite of doom and gloom. That's right. That's right. I love that. I love that. So, kind of staying on the topic of change, I want to know, like, what were the early stages of you becoming a chef? It sounds like you had already been um, in the culinary world when you were in college, but more as a hobby. So making that change into doing it full time as a career, like what were some of the emotions that you experienced as you were going through this change?
Yeah, so that was a good question. Um, that hobby was really about procrastinating because I think I've covered the fact that I didn't want to be an engineer. So it was always about what to do during study break. And so to procrastinate more studying, I would bake. And and not only enjoy the baking after, but the process of it is what I fell in love with. The calm of it. Maybe it's because I was doing it in the middle of the night alone, but that process really it really grounded me. And that feeling of just being one with what you were doing, the product, the mixing, the emulsification, like all of that just started becoming so interesting to me. And to see the product later and then to share it with people, like that was magic for me. So I was
Yeah.
like, how do people do this every day? How can I do this every day and still have a career and still bring people joy? So at that point,
Yeah.
it was bringing people joy through dessert. And um funnily enough, my best friend's mom, she had actually gone to the Cordon Bleu in London in the 60s. And so I was hanging around a lot with them because they were like my surrogate family in New Zealand. I was a boarder. I was, I didn't have family there. And
Hmm.
she would just whip up these meals just for like, Tuesday night dinner. But the ease at which she was doing it, like I fell in love with that kind of symphony that was happening in the kitchen, just watching her work. Like to me, that was
Mm.
magical. I want to do that and I want to be good at
Mhm.
it. And then I'm like, I'm going to show my Asian parents that I can be even better. I'm going to own my business one day. I don't know all this. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
how the
Yeah.
train starts. And I don't know, my husband and I, we were so young at the time. We barely, I think we got married in December, but we moved in March, April. I was in the Cordon Bleu in Ottawa by June.
Wow. So you
Yeah.
also did this change when you were married too.
Yeah, barely. Like we were, yeah, 2 months, and I'm like, so don't want to be an engineer anymore. He's like, okay. He's like,
Wow.
okay, like, do you want to do anything? I'm like, yeah, let's bake. He's like, okay, where? I'm like, that's a school. He's like, what? But it was fun. We
Wow.
were young. We didn't have anything, tying us down.
Mhm.
We literally just came as backpackers. Like we quit our jobs. We said, we'll give North America 1 year. I'm going to
Mhm.
pastry school, and then we'll go back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so like
Yeah.
23 years later, yeah, here we are.
I'm just curious quickly about your specialty as a chef, a pastry
Yeah.
chef. Is it first? Is it exclusively pastry chef or no?
It is. It is. Yeah,
Okay,
I did pastry.
it's pastry.
Yeah, I trained in pastry and I worked for 10 years all over hotels,
Hmm.
restaurants, pastry shops. And then I had my own bakery for another 10 downtown in Vancouver, BC.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what was okay? So what was the number one thing that people came to your bakery for? For the
Well,
big that was like the big item
we were known
or
for our French
items.
macarons.
Ooh,
Yeah,
macarons.
we were known for that because I think when I opened, because it was downtown and we needed an inn
Yeah,
because I was a nobody. I know
yeah.
I was an immigrant. I was brown. I was a woman.
Mhm.
No French blood.
Mhm.
Just the love of French pastry, and so to break that mold of thinking about how is it that someone who does not look like a tall white French man make macarons and then sell them at a premium price because of the quality of the
Yeah.
ingredients that we're doing and everything's handmade. How do you
Wow.
how do you
Yeah.
how do you position that?
Yeah.
So I built a brand. I built a brand that people could buy into, kind of like Starbucks. Who knows? Do you
Yeah.
know the CEO of Starbucks?
Y- Say that again.
Do you know the CEO of Starbucks?
I don't know his name, but I've heard of him.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was my point. That was how I looked at it. I looked at it that if people don't know the CEO of a brand that they trust, what does it matter for
Yeah.
me? And then I
Yeah.
realized I'm not Starbucks.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
And so when I embodied the brand and started putting myself out there more, the response was overwhelming. I think
Mhm.
at first I had to hide behind the brand because I thought that the perception was for me was that my existence was diminishing the value of the brand. No one would buy
Mm.
from a brown woman
Yeah.
in that space
Yeah.
because what we had around here were the French and the
Yeah.
European white men, and they were amazing, and these are people I look up to, like this is who I learned from. But society is a different ballgame, right? You work
Yeah.
with two things. You work with your perception of who you are plus the perception that you have to deal with from others.
Was there a point where you were able to come from hiding behind the brand, and what did that look like?
That was 2020. That was
Really?
George
So
Floyd.
10 years, so almost a decade into you, well, over 2 decades
Yes.
into pastry, but
Yeah.
wow, 2020 is when you became, I'm sorry.
That was a global movement that
Wow.
happened, and the people who had to die for that to make it a movement gave
Yeah.
me the courage to step up.
Wow. What did that do for you?
Sorry,
Because
I'm
in an
getting
aspect,
emotional.
no, it's okay. It's okay. Take your time. Take your time. I'm just going to speak a little bit while you are, uh, you know,
Yeah.
processing. I can imagine that, you know, you have your dream, right? You're a pastry chef. Now you have a product that everybody loves, right? And you have a brand that people are loyal to in some capacity because you did it for a decade, right? But you weren't able to be yourself. What did it feel like um, during that time to
Sure.
hide yourself? I mean, I understand like why you did, but what effect did that have on you? Because I think people need to understand, like, especially for people of color, or yeah, people of color, like, we do stuff and we're like, well, I just had to do it, right? But people don't realize what we are sacrificing to just have to do it, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we get a lot of these labels of being strong and resilient, and oh well, they know how to get through all of this. Yeah, we do, but it doesn't feel good that we have to do it. So I would like for people to hear like what the effect that does have on us when we do have to hide who we are to have the dream that we want. If you feel in the capacity to share that.
Yeah, sure, Zainab.
And you can
On
keep
the
crying.
surface, thank you.
Well, trust me, this podcast, we will see a lot of tears. I just
Yeah,
want
I
you to
mean,
know. Probably for me.
it's well, it's what we go through, right? It's
Yeah.
every journey is different, but I think in the beginning it felt very comfortable.
Mm.
It was great because people were coming, we were thriving. My staff doubled and tripled. At some point, we had satellite stores. It was really
Wow.
quite amazing to see. And to me, I thought that was what business was about.
Mm-hmm.
So I loved it. And so that made me hide even more. So when I had those who were non people of color working, because we had a huge variety of people who came to Swaret and worked with us throughout the years, and those people who customers assumed owned the store, started the store, whatever. Like I almost encouraged them to just appease the customer and say, yeah, whatever, because to me it didn't matter. To me, what mattered was sales,
Yeah.
because I put my
Yeah,
life
you
on
are
the
making
line.
money. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
not only making money, I had loans to pay.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Yeah.
So when you're in business for yourself and you know, open a bakery, there is a lot of overhead, right?
Yeah.
It is not something that you can
It's
just do
high
with a
risk.
laptop. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you have obligations and you don't want to sink. You have I had a young family at the time, and it was business and numbers. So it was
Yeah.
comfortable. But then if you really think about it, it just starts chipping away at your confidence, and it just starts
Yeah.
chipping away at like self doubt,
Yeah.
and self
Yeah.
worth.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
these things always pop in when you have to actually do events, because we were always called for, and I did a lot of events where they were for charity, or like we're raising money for the aquarium, raising money for cancer, AIDS, right? So we, as some of the top pastry shops, top restaurants in the industry, we would be invited and said, hey, do you want to come out? And those were the moments that like petrified me, because I
Yeah.
had to go as myself.
Oh, wow.
And even standing
Wow.
next to one of my dearest friends. I've spoken about this in before, but
Mm-hmm.
he's 6'4", white guy, like, the sweetest man you can ever come across, and everyone would just go up to him and say, oh my god, like, what you've done here is amazing, like, where did you go to school, what made you open the shop? And I'm standing
Mm.
right there next to him. So then he'd look
Mm-mm-mm.
at them, and then he'll look at me and goes, you'll want to ask all those questions to Shobna, because she's the executive pastry chef. And then you could just see the reactions, right? They just look you up and down going, really?
Mm-mm.
So I think it's a mixture of surprise, but also, why are you surprised?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate your raw emotions, because that hurts.
Hmm.
People don't realize it, because we've been conditioned to hide it. But it hurts to work hard,
Yeah.
to build this reputation. And in an instant, somebody diminishes it because they assume that the man next to you is the one who's accomplished it. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
this is why we have to have, this is why conversations about inclusion, and visibility is important, creating those spaces so we can shift the mindset, so we're not so quick to assume that the tall white man standing next to you is the executive chef,
Yeah.
right?
And I get it.
It's
Like, I get it.
yeah.
I understand where they're coming from, and they don't mean to hurt people,
Hmm.
because it's systemic. It's
Yeah, it is
not
systemic,
personal. It's systemic. It's what
right?
they're conditioned to believe. So they're not
Yeah.
doing that to me personally, but you're right,
Hmm.
it hurts nonetheless.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's
it
why
does.
coaching now to me matters so much, because, like, this is the things I have had to learn over time, and I want to fast track that for you.
Yeah, and that's, and I come to, and that's why I I'm not afraid to bring approach these types of conversations with my clients either, because one of the other major drivers of insecurity, especially with women of color, is the fact that our stories are not affirmed, they're not acknowledged, our feelings are not acknowledged. And so, because, and we don't see it acknowledged publicly. So when we're going through something, we immediately blame ourselves, like, what's wrong with me, did I do something wrong?
Yeah.
When it's like, no, you are trying to survive in a system, in circumstances that are not designed for you. So of course you're going to feel insecure, of
Yeah.
course you're going to question some of the decisions that you're making, because you work so hard to get to a point and then somebody diminishes it. And I know, like, you're right, people mean well, but I'm a big advocate of um, learning new habits and unlearning bad habits.
Hmm.
And the assumptions that we make about other people are habit,
Yeah.
right? So the best way to change our assumptions, one, is to not make assumptions, right?
Yeah.
Shout out to the four agreements.
Yeah.
But two is to develop a new habit where you're not making assumptions and you challenge yourself in that moment to do that. And there are people who are intentional about it. Those are the people I feel like are real advocates. But then there are people who they ignore it, or they get defensive when you ask them to change their habits. We're going off on a tangent, but I
But
but I
that's
wanted
okay.
to
Yeah.
frame that, because for the people who are listening, you know, we've both shared that your feelings are valid and you're not imagining anything. There's a lot of circumstances that are
You
making
nailed
it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You nailed it. So you're not imagining this, and it's okay. It's okay to
Yes.
acknowledge, it's okay to validate. It is not you.
That's right. That's right. It's not you.
It's not
It's not
you.
you.
It is
Yeah.
real.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're not the only one.
That's right. That's right.
You have
That's
people.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So, I want to thank you for sharing that. That was so beautiful. I wanted to talk about the well, you can tell me if this is true, but I feel like the second major change in your life, career wise, transitioning into coaching.
Hmm.
And if you can kind of just share, I love the parallel between being a server, right? Being of service. And this is a great place to recognize people who work in culinary arts or even food service, Tim Hortons and all that. Like, by you providing that food, that service, you're feeding someone, right? You're also you're nurturing them for the day, right? You may be helping them with a moment because, sometimes you need a donut.
You need a moment. Yes. You need that moment to be
You need a
special.
macaroni.
Yes.
I posted a
Exactly.
video earlier this week and I was eating me some ice cream and I
Oh,
said, I
I
had a
remember
day.
that. I remember that. You're like, I had a day. Don't judge.
I had a day. So for anyone who works in food, who works in the culinary arts, who works in food service, all of the above, you are providing a service. You are serving others, but it's not just handing them the food. You don't know. You are providing something to them that may not have the words or can be measured. So thank you for that. So anyway,
Yeah.
so being a person of service through your bakery, now transitioning to being a person of service through coaching. What did that look like? And what made you decide to make that change?
Yeah. That was so I actually have a friend who is a coach, and
Mm-hmm.
there was a time that was approaching. It all sounds very practical because my lease was up, and so I was up for renewal. Right. So I was like, ooh, if the lease is up, and sometimes it's a phrase people go, your lease is up. What
Mm-hmm.
you gonna
Your
do?
bakery lease. Your
Yes,
bakery
my
lease was up.
bakery lease
Okay.
was up. So
Mm-hmm.
and my rates went up by about 40%. This was
Oof,
post
Vancouver,
COVID, yeah,
Vancouver.
post COVID, right? But during COVID, I mean, we crushed it because everyone realized that they needed cake, which is great. And
They had a
we
lot of
provided a
clients.
service. Boy, did we provide. We were hustling, going, driving. It was incredible. And it was one of the most profitable times of the bakery because there was only two of us.
Mm,
And
wow.
we just hustled. And it was really great. So we didn't even shut down for one day. But when it came time to figure this out, going, what does my life look like for the next 5 years? Kieran's about to go into grade 8. I now have to make how much more to afford the rent on the place that I need to sign
Yeah.
on. I am now in my 40s. What more can this dream offer me?
Yes.
And how is it that I can exist in there with purpose? Then
Yes.
I realized,
Ooh, ding, ding, ding.
ding ding ding, because I realized what you just said. It was like my whole being is to serve others. Like that is what I've always wanted to do, and to make a career out of it so that I can serve my family by existing and paying for
Mm-hmm.
things. So
Mm-hmm.
the shift for me became from serving others to now serving those who serve.
Mm.
So now I
Mm.
coach, right? So I coach women entrepreneurs. I focus on women of color who I
Yes.
really, really want to help amplify and help just I just want to help them skip some steps.
Mm-hmm.
Some hard steps that over 20, 25 years of me working, I've learned. I'm like, you don't have to go through those steps because they were dumb steps anyway. It taught me
Yeah.
things, but now let me tell you and let me help
Yeah.
you through those steps, because
Yeah.
I don't want people to feel the way I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah.
I do see a change in society, which I'm so grateful for, that I get to live within this lifetime to actually see this shift happening, this global shift. But
Mm-hmm.
in all honesty, it's going to take, we're still a work in progress.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was that shift for me. I was like, how can I do this where it means something to me, where I can still claim back my time with my family? Like I literally didn't see my family for 2 years. Like during COVID, like I didn't see them. no idea
Mm.
what they were doing, where they were. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, Kieran was at home doing homeschooling, and I was just like, go, we
Yeah.
had to go.
Yeah.
And so it was a huge moment of, I refuse to call it midlife crisis because it wasn't a crisis,
Mm-mm.
but it was a real moment of reconsideration, reframing, and again, change,
Yeah.
opportunity. It was like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, what is it that I value now? Because values change too. Like what you valued then versus what you value now. What your life looked like then versus what your life looks like now. It's all in reflection. But when you're so
Yeah.
busy hustling in your career, there is no time for you to think about what happened before because you're like, oh my God, what's on my calendar tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah. And if I can share, because a couple things came up for me when you were talking.
Mhm.
One about the purpose. I think something that I want people to receive is that um, when something ends, it's not necessarily because you failed or you couldn't do it anymore. It's because the purpose that it has been fulfilled,
That
right? And then the other thing is
that's
that
gorgeous.
where you are, I always encourage people to make decisions for themselves based on where they are right now, right?
Yes.
Now, granted, you don't want to necessarily make a decision that could be detrimental to your future, like that could cause harm to your future, right? But if you decide to take a break, go to school, and study for a couple of years, and you feel like that's what you need for yourself right now, that's okay. Even if after the 2 years you finish, you don't actually do what you studied, me.
Yeah.
You take what you learn from that
Yes.
experience and you leverage it. But that's what you need for yourself right now, right? So, because you mentioned values, right? And you mentioned about the values that you had when you first started um, as a baker, as a pastry chef. They're not gone, but they've evolved,
Absolutely.
right?
Because
And
we
they
have
look
to,
differently now.
yeah, we have to understand that we evolve. People
Yes.
say people don't change. Yes, they do.
Hmm.
Whether we want to recognize it or not, it's a different story.
Yeah, we're supposed to change.
Yes,
We're supposed to change.
yes, because change
Yeah.
is opportunity. It is opportunity for you to grow. And the fact that I went back to school for coaching, it really gave me a chance to learn again because I was
Hmm.
so busy teaching, I was so busy mentoring, I was so busy giving the knowledge and like passing it down. But I was like, I need to now receive as well.
Yeah.
So I was back to
I love
receiving
that.
so that I can give again.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was
Woo!
just a change.
Ding, 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 ding,
Ding,
ding,
ding.
ding, ding.
But it
I
was
have,
transformational, Zainab. It was transformational for me.
and I want to ask you as we close out, I have a couple more questions, but one of them is, how do you feel right now? Like you're actually in the um, act of doing the things, excuse me, that you invested time in as a coach, right? But now you have all of the lessons and the reflections from in the past where you hid behind your brand. Like one of the things that I love your artwork for your podcast with the colors in your
Thank
face, and
you.
it's so beautiful. And now that I hear your story about how you felt like you had to hide, you were forced um, to see you now, like be the face of it. Like how does this all feel for you right
Still fearful.
now?
Yeah, still fearful. But but the difference I think now is that I'm learning how to be a bit more comfortable with the discomfort.
Yes,
And being in
yes.
that, like, it really, it's a dance, Zainab. It's a dance. Sometimes you take a step forward, sometimes you take a couple of steps back, and then you take a step forward, and then you move to side to side. It's just that fluidity of what it means to be me and putting myself out there in a way that I've never done before. um
Yeah.
it feels good to be me.
Mm, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it just feels good to with I've figured out a way for myself to cope with judgment, cope with perception of
Yeah.
others, like, and to really feel true to your own voice and to listen to it, because it is so strong,
Yeah.
and it gives you
Mm.
power, like unimaginable power, to love and to
Yeah.
and to be loved and to cherish and to share with people. And to me,
Hmm.
it's connection, right? And so I don't care if it's through Zoom, through WhatsApp, like I don't care. It's still connection to me.
Yeah.
Through a voice, like something from the other side of the world can touch me through a podcast, through a message, through reading. Like, it's connection.
Mm.
So yeah.
Ooh, you're just giving me hugs of words. I love it.
Yeah, it feels really good. Thank you for asking that question, and
Absolutely,
it
because I
really
do.
makes a difference.
Yes, because I think sometimes when we think about the final, when we see like the fruition of our work and the accomplishment, we focus on more of the tangible, the physical things like more money and, even more time. But it's like, what is the like feel the rewarding feeling? Like what's the emotional accomplishment that you
Yeah,
have that you're experiencing?
yeah.
Okay, so my last question is I gotta pull out my notes here, so I'll probably have to edit this part out. But um, well, I wanted to ask you, like, what piece of advice? Uh, oh, I have two more questions. Okay,
Okay.
I totally told Shobna I was like, this is gonna be 30 minutes. All right, that's okay.
It's okay.
The part one of the two is when you think about your authentic self, and you kind of touched it in a little bit, but um, now how do you show up as your authentic self when it comes to your work and your career?
I do a lot of letting go. I do a lot of letting go
Mm,
of perceptions. I do a lot of letting go of people pleasing. Um, and the funny thing is that in my interactions, I think people now, I think the way I am, to have that confidence to be who you are, no matter what,
mhm,
it it blossoms when you're with people. It really does. The
mm,
people that are around you who see you,
mm.
not for what you've accomplished, but to see you for who you are. And I think being in this space of service, it's a different sort of space now,
Yeah,
and surrounding yourself with those people, it just, you you absorb that energy of saying it's okay to be you.
yeah,
We like you for you.
yeah,
And the more of that positive affirmation you see around you, and the more you accept that for yourself,
yeah,
is how is how I had to kind of move
yeah,
into that space. Um, Not to say I wasn't really, authentic before, but I always thought that it had to be tied to like my job, my accomplishments, my
yeah,
achievements. That's like a Food Network judge, like, oh, it's, that's how
yeah.
you start. They're like, what do you do? Because that's the first question. It's a very, very dominant question to go like, hi, I'm so and so, and they're like, oh, great, yeah, what do you do?
Mhm.
Instead of like, who are you? Like, let
Yeah,
me learn something about you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then the
That's
where you're
beautiful.
from. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Don't
like,
get me
how
started on
long do
that.
you have?
Don't get me started on that one.
Yeah.
I love that. There's some. We may have to do a part two, maybe on your
Like,
podcast. I'm inviting myself to your podcast. So
you
just
see,
my
that
me being audacious
that's
at this
how it
moment.
that's how it works. That's that's the beauty of love, Zainab. That is like,
Yeah,
we have a lot to give.
yeah.
And so part two will be on Color Me Brave. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead and plug it because I said I was gonna give you some space to plug it. So the very final question is for everyone listening, um, what piece of advice would you give to someone who is feeling unsure about where they are in their career, maybe even struggling with being their authentic self in their career? What a piece of advice would you give them?
Okay. Um when you're unsure about where you
Mm-hmm.
are in your career, I would be curious to find out what it would be like for you to even just write down the things that you are sure of.
Mm-hmm.
What are the things
Mm.
that make you happy? What are the things that are fulfilling you right now?
Yeah.
And what are the things you love to do?
Mm-hmm.
And then marry that with how you can monetize that, because that's what a career is. A career needs to be purposeful. It You are
Yes.
doing it like the most time that you're awake in your day.
Yeah.
So that's what a career is. You marry your purpose with remuneration. Like, you need to be
Mm-hmm.
paid for your talents. You need to be paid
Yeah.
for what you are offering. And if you
Yeah.
can find out what those unique strengths are, because a lot of us are unsure about a lot. I mean, I'm unsure about where I am, but
Mm-hmm.
some of that time I kind of be like, you know what am I sure of right now? Like, I find
Yeah.
comfort in that.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. So just kind of,
Exactly.
yeah, looking at it from the other angle, right? Because you have got here based on something. What are those
That's
things?
right. That's right.
Your
That's
journey
exactly.
didn't just start.
Yeah. I tell people that all
Accessing,
the time. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 All
You didn't get here. You just didn't pop up all of a sudden and you're sitting
yes,
here talking to me like
yes,
there were things that you did,
yes,
decisions that you made to help you get to this point
yes.
that
Honor
were the
that.
right decision. Yeah. And celebrate it
Honor that
and
journey.
celebrate it.
Celebrate that journey. Exactly right. Yeah.
Beautiful. This was great. Thank you so much, Shobna. I had a
Thanks, Dana.
blast, and I'm just grateful. As you were talking, I was just thinking, like, you know how, like you said, when you start something new, you question, like, am I making the right decision? And as you were talking, I was like, I made a good
There
decision.
you go. Yeah.
I cannot wait to keep doing recording more
Oh,
episodes
good. Good, good, good.
because we're just amazing, creatures, human beings, and we just have so much to offer. And I love that we can share this, without any type of clickbait moments. We're
No,
not trying to do that.
I
We are not trying to
yeah.
do the viral make people
No,
mad moments. That's not
no,
what it
I'm
is.
not. And I think people are mistaken. Like, some people, but that's their perception. That's what they want to think,
Yeah.
because but I'm just, again, someone called me yesterday and they're like, "What are you seeing in your analytics?" I'm like, "What analytics?" I'm like, I'm creating I'm just doing it for fun, and we've got good people that I want to bring on and talk to and share stories
And
with.
that's it.
That was it.
That's me too. I don't even know if this is something that I'll be able to monetize, but that's not the purpose of it. So if I do,
Yes.
that's icing on the cake.
Yes,
You're in
yes,
the same place. Yeah.
exactly. I'm like, this is some it's my passion project.
Yeah.
It's not propelling
Yeah.
my career. Like, this is a like I'm
Yeah.
doing two things now. I'm doing that the coaching bit, which is supposed to be monetizing, and then
Yeah.
I'm doing my passion project, like my passion. So it's passion and purpose, like,
Yeah.
and there's some things in between. They cross lines, they dance with each other. But at the end of the day, I'm like, we really do need to amplify. How can I help other women of color? And
Yeah.
what am I comfortable with doing? And what am I going to have fun doing? And I was like, ooh, podcast.
That's right. I love it. So before you go, I'd like you to share about your podcast, any socials people can follow you, and I'll obviously put that in the show notes as
Ooh,
well. But if you want to
okay.
share,
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just started Color Me Brave. Color Me Brave podcast was launched during Asian Heritage Month. It was very important to me to launch during that month, just to pay homage to Asian women of color, and I'm Southeast Asian. But I look
hmm
Indian, and then I'm Canadian, but I'm also a Kiwi. So I'm citizen of the
hmm
world, but I'm woman of color.
that's
And
right.
yeah, this was really a space for us to share our stories, share our journeys.
hmm
Some entrepreneurial stories, including parenthood and just navigating life, but trying your best to do it as yourself.
Mm.
I think
Beautiful.
just
So
kind of
Color Me
like
Brave.
color me
It's on
brave.
all podcast platforms, correct? And
All
then
that I can think of. Yes.
where can people is your Instagram public? It is public,
It
right?
is. Yeah, yeah. So you can find me on my coaching channel at swaret.coaching, or if you want
Mhm.
to follow my food, it's at Love Swaret.
And how do you spell Soirette for anyone
Yeah, it's S for
who needs
Sam,
to know?
Oirette.
Beautiful. Love
It's a
Soirette.
made
I
up
don't
word.
follow
Yeah.
that. So I need to follow that because food is just I was telling my husband, you can buy video games, I'm going
And
to
my
spend my
food.
money on food.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Very nice. Well, thank you so much, Shobna. It was
Thanks,
beautiful
enough.
talking to you and getting
Yeah,
to know you more. And
same. I can't believe
thank
I
you,
cried.
everyone.
Ah!
No, that was beautiful. It was such beautiful tears. So don't. It's all good. I again, I promise you this. You will be the first of many because tears are a good thing.
It's
So
part of who we are. Yeah.
thank you
Releasing
so
joy.
much.
Thank you, Zainab.